Good evening and welcome to the first edition of Guest House TV for 2025. Happy New Year. It's great to see you. My name is Adam Helman. I'm the Executive Director of the Guest House. And today we're very fortunate to have my friend Katherine Shank, the CEO of Legal Aid Chicago. We're going to talk with Kate about the work that she does and the interaction with the Guest House. And just as a reminder, Guest House is a nonprofit. We provide temporary lodging for patients and their families when they need to stay near the hospital in Chicago. So you've seen me talk before. Now let's talk to Kate a little bit. So Kate, welcome to the show. Please introduce yourself. Tell us about what you do.
Great. Thank you so much for having me here, Adam, and inviting me to talk about Legal Aid Chicago. So as Adam mentioned, my name is Kate Shank, and I'm the CEO and Executive Director of Legal Aid Chicago. We are also a nonprofit. What we do is we are lawyers and paralegals who represent low-income people for free on civil legal issues. So it's sort of interesting to describe yourself and your work as something you don't do. But in some cases, for our work, that's a good way to start, which is to say we don't provide criminal legal representation. But what we do is virtually everything else. Because in our legal system, legal issues are generally speaking divided into the criminal side of things, and they're divided into civil. And the civil side of things, which is what our work is really a full range. So we're talking about people who are needing help with a divorce or domestic violence, people who are having their utilities shut off, who are being pushed out of their housing, who have been wrongfully fired from their work, who need help with public benefits, who need help to stay in their long-term care facilities, who need immigration relief and are trying to get work status and other legal status to be in this country. And many, many, many more issues that we can probably touch on. But it is a very huge area of law. And another kind of component that people may not understand is that in criminal law, there is a right to legal representation. But when you're facing eviction from your home, when you're facing the removal of kids from your care, when you're trying to get an order of protection to keep yourself safe, there is no right to an attorney. And so that is the space where Legal Aid Chicago comes in. We represent low-income people, as I said, for free. We never charge for our services. And we provide the full range of legal representation on those issues that I listed and so many more.
That's fascinating to think about, too, because, you imagine that somebody, they're having an eviction issue, and it's them, and they're going to go to court, and maybe they've never experienced this before, and they're there with their landlord, who's on the other side of this, and maybe the landlord's attorney, and maybe this isn't the landlord's first rodeo in this case situation, and these folks are like, what am I supposed to do? How do I address the judge? How do we even have this hearing? Right? So the idea that representation is your way to have a voice in court and have a voice in that public forum is so important.
You've hit on so many of the key issues right there, Adam, is that in so many of the circumstances when we are representing our clients in court or before an administrative body, the other side is very often quite familiar with the proceedings. They often have representation. They are they're not there necessarily every day, but their lawyers may be.
Right.
And they have familiarity with what the legal issues are and how the proceedings go. And that is so often not the case for our clients. Mm-hmm. It is the first time that they're going to court because they're facing an eviction. It's the first time that they are trying to determine what level of food stamps they should be entitled to, SNAP benefits. It may be the first time they're trying to obtain disability benefits or veterans benefits. Mm-hmm. And so they are really at just a massive disadvantage when they don't have legal representation, because expecting anybody to be able to properly obtain their rights, what they're entitled to without that legal representation because of the complexities of our legal system is just simply unrealistic and unfair. And so what Legal Aid Chicago does, as well as other civil legal aid providers, what we do is we just help to level the playing field, right, and to allow people to access the rights, the benefits, the services that they are entitled to under the law.
So imagine a case, so a person would contact you, they get an eviction notice, or they get something similar. What would be another thing like that someone might get, and they would call you up and say, "I've got this eviction notice. What do I do?"
Sure. We get all sorts of calls, right? A notice has been taped to their door or slid under their door, or they've received a notice that their Social Security benefits are being reduced or eliminated, or any other benefit that they may have. So what we're going to start with, obviously, with anyone who comes to us, is we're first going to ascertain, do they have a legal issue that is the one of the type that we handle? And we handle so very many legal issues. That oftentimes that's easier, that's the easy start, right? We're also going to determine, are they financially eligible for our services? Because as I mentioned, we only represent low-income people.
Right.
So if someone has the resources to hire an attorney, they're not going to be eligible to get services, advice, guidance, representation from us. So once we've kind of like crossed those two steps, then we're going to really take a look at what is happening in the case. We're going to want to see the paperwork. And that's always kind of key first level legal advice, is hang on to that paperwork. Right? Those notices that come in the mail, anything that your landlord gives you, anything your employer gives you, all of those kind of paperwork, that's going to be really key for our lawyers, for any lawyers, to look at and try to get a base understanding. And then we're just going to gather information. We're going to gather the facts from the person who's reached out to us for help to figure out, okay, is there a violation of the law, or is there a right that the person who's contacting us is entitled to? And we're going to figure out what would be the next step to help them to obtain the justice that they deserve, that they have a right to. So it's a process of conversation, of investigation, and then we figure out, okay, are we going to do something like give guidance on, okay, here is a website you can go to, here's a phone number you can call, here's how you can tackle this problem, our guidance on how to tackle this problem on your own. Or are we going to take another step? Are we going to write a letter to your landlord? Are we going to pick up the phone and call your employer? Are we going to try to work something out with the school that is trying to suspend or expel your child? What is maybe a short term or a small intervention that we can make that will have a lasting difference? Or are we going to represent you in court and stay with you for the months or sometimes the years until it takes to get that resolution?
So that's really interesting too. I think sometimes people think about the law and they think about, well, my day in court. But so much of the legal world occurs outside of court, and cases never get to court. So they're handled on a more administrative basis, but people still need that kind of help, even if they're not sitting in the courtroom at Cook County somewhere, right?
That's totally right. And most cases don't get all the way to trial as what we see on television. So much, just as you said, of the real work and the real rights are obtained through conversation, through negotiation, and ultimately, through agreement. Now, it may take quite a long time to get there, and it absolutely takes somebody who understands what the law is and understands what the rights are and understands the process and is willing to go further if needed. But in many circumstances, the situation can be resolved, either before court or before a judge needs to make the final decision.
Got it. And if somebody gets this disturbing notice or has this issue they need help with, how do they contact Legal Aid Chicago?
So there's a variety of ways to get in touch with us. So for many, the quickest and easiest is to pick up the phone and call. So our number, our just regular phone number is 312-341-1070. And we have our team that answers the phone. Best time to call is first thing in the morning. Another way to call or to get in contact with us is to register for our services online. So our website, our organizational name is quite straightforward. It's Legal Aid Chicago. And our website is legalaidchicago.org. And there's a place to register for our services, and that can be done any time of day or night to kind of get into the line for contact. We also are out in the community. So we have 4 different locations where we take folks to just walk in. And we have a location in Woodlawn. We have a location in North Lawndale. We have a location in Austin, and we have a location in Humboldt Park.
Great.
And in each one of those locations, we are there one evening a month for folks to come in. And all the information about the addresses and the times and so forth is also on our website. So, for example, we're hosting one of those walk-in legal clinics tonight out in North Lawndale.
Great.
And I was at our location in Woodlawn with our partner Akarama last week. We had 20-some people come in, and we were able to see and serve every single one of them.
So that's great. So you have south, west, and north side locations.
That's right.
Terrific. And just, can we go through the phone number and the website names again, or the website again, just so people can understand it if they didn't get a chance to write it down?
Yes, thanks. So the phone number is 312-341-1070. And then the organization name is Legal Aid Chicago. And the website is www.legalaidchicago.org.
Okay, thank you. So tell us a little bit about, how did you get involved in this organization? What's your history there?
I came to Legal Aid Chicago straight from my graduation from law school. I went to Northwestern here in Chicago, and I always knew going into law school that I wanted to do work. I wanted to do social justice focused work. So I really wanted to focus my skills, my work on serving people who might otherwise not have access to justice. And I was really fortunate right after graduation basically to get a job with Legal Aid Chicago as a fellow, and I started working serving survivors of domestic violence in orders of protection and divorce, and in custody and visitation and child support cases. And as my time with Legal Aid Chicago grew, my practice grew to incorporate other areas of law, bankruptcy, housing, eviction, some home ownership work. And I've stayed with the organization. I've been the CEO for the past little over a year, but I've been with the organization now for 23 years.
Wow.
And have seen a lot of just incredible work by my colleagues over the years. And I can say that it just amazes me every day what we are able to achieve on behalf of our clients, who I have every confidence would never be able to navigate the legal system to get what they're entitled to. Right. Without, the work of the attorneys and the others that I work alongside.
Wow. So how many lawyers work on the staff at Legal Aid Chicago?
We have a great team of about 115 lawyers.
115 lawyers.
So it's a lot of people. And then, we also have paralegals and other advocates, as well as really incredible support team, social workers as well on staff, and as well as all the team that, makes sure everything works, right? But we need that many people.
Yes.
On the advocacy side, truly, because there are so many legal issues that we cover, and the need is just tremendous. So there are approximately 1 million people in Cook County who are financially eligible for the services that we provide. Now, they're not all going to have a legal issue on any day.
Right.
But because the civil legal system is so enormous and covers so many different areas, it is very likely that at some point in a person who's living in poverty, at some point in their life, there's going to be an intersection with the civil legal system where there's something that they should have that they're not able to access, that there's a problem with their landlord, that there's an issue with their utilities. So, not all of them obviously are going to be able to access civil legal services. There's just a huge gap in what we're able to provide. And we're not the only providers out there. We're just the biggest.
Right.
So we work in partnership with other organizations and other providers too. But yeah, so there's just a lot of need out there, and so we need to have a really strong staff across all of our legal areas to be able to serve.
So I have a seasonal question. This is a hypothetical, but let's say I'm renting my apartment, and I grew up on the south side, so let's say it's on the south side, and it's winter now, and the heat's not working in my apartment, and maybe the landlord stopped paying the heating bills or something. But what I know is it's starting to get pretty cold in there, and maybe what do? I call my landlord and they're not picking up the phone. So what is the process that you would pursue for that person?
Sure. So it's really important to know that there are minimum levels of what the temperature should be, depending on the time of year. So where we are right now, the temperature needs to be, I think it's 68 degrees during the day, and 65 degrees at night. So if it's not, at a minimum of those during those different times of the day, then the landlord is out of compliance. So, as you said, first step is always going to be to contact the landlord.
Right.
Okay. And if the landlord is not responsive or refuses to make a change, always contacting, Legal Aid Chicago. Calling 311 is also an option. So that is another way to get connected with potentially city services on a wide variety of housing-related issues.
Okay, yeah. And one of the things that really makes me think about the housing issue is for the guest house, we work with people whether they live around the corner from us on the near west side or from across the country. And one of the groups that we often work with when we're working locally are people whose home is not conducive to treatment. So let's say they're staying with us for a few weeks because they're getting cancer treatment. And either riding back and forth on the bus is not a good idea if they're taking the CTA or the train, or maybe it's that their home, the apartment, is not really a very good place for them because it's too cold or because the landlord is not cleaning the snow and ice, I guess snow and ice these days, off the front stairs. And so it's hazardous for them to get in and out of the apartment. So one of the things that I know we do and we're really interested in is while Legal Aid Chicago is working to straighten things out with the landlord, we might be able to help the family who needs to be near the hospital so that they can keep getting back and forth to treatment.
Yeah, that's such a great point of contact between the important work that Chicago House is doing and the work that we are doing, to make sure that someone has a healthy living situation, so that they can really focus on their health care and their health needs. Another kind of piece of work that we do that's I think also really complementary is we have several what are called medical legal partnerships. And this work and this kind of connection between Chicago House is really similar. So we partner with the University of Chicago hospitals in their trauma unit. We also partner with Cook County hospitals where their medical care providers have identified that the patient has a legal issue that has an impact on their health.
Wow, okay.
So they will then contact us. So it's a really similar situation to exactly what you've identified. So it could be that someone is not getting the public benefits in terms of the medical insurance benefits that they might be entitled to, or that there may be a domestic violence situation that is impacting their health, and they need support in terms of that separation and a safety plan and an order of protection, or there may be other housing condition issues. There may be, insects, mold, rodents, other things, that are making it an unsafe house to be in from a medical perspective. And so that's where we will assess those cases and potentially get involved to help make the correction on the home side, so that they can really focus on their health care. And that's, part of the work, obviously, the important work that you're doing too. Right.
Guest House does exactly that to make sure during treatment people have the right kind of place to stay. And it is interesting that both Stroger Hospital of Cook County and University of Chicago, or the U Chicago Medicine as they call themselves, are partners of ours. And so we work with their patients. We work with patients from Rush, University of Illinois, or UI Health, Northwestern. And so we have a pretty broad array. Actually, if they're cancer patients, it doesn't really matter what hospital they go to. They can stay with us. And likewise, organ transplant patients, if during treatment they need a place to stay, we're there to support them because we have partnerships with American Cancer Society and Gift of Hope Organ and Tissue Donor Network. it's a fascinating question when we think about how the law and medical world interact, and also just the many different ways that the legal world confronts people just every day in Chicago.
Every day, and there's circumstances. There's fairly limited circumstances where people with means have intersections with the legal system, and it's getting a divorce, making a will,
Right.
Buying or selling a home. So those come in those big buckets. But when you're talking about people who are living in poverty, there's so many other points of intersection.
Right.
And you see that surely with the guests that you're working with.
Right. Definitely. So as we're doing that, as we're kind of going through this, so I know we've talked about housing, we've talked about healthcare, we've talked about domestic violence, and I know you said just about everything. Can you give us a couple of other for instances?
Sure. So I know another kind of point of intersection that you mentioned is your service to veterans.
Right.
We do as well. So we serve veterans on a wide variety of civil legal issues, but focused just to veterans, we help them with their service-connected benefits and ensuring that they are getting the proper amount of their service-connected benefits, sometimes doing discharge upgrades to entitle them to a higher level of benefits if they had an inappropriate sort of rating.
Right.
We also serve people who are looking to seal or expunge their criminal record.
Yes.
So that they can get a fresh start. So we are working with both folks who sometimes have records from when they were juveniles, when they were kids,
Right.
that are continuing to keep them from moving forward in an employment context and a housing context. And sometimes it's, arrests and other things from when they were adults.
Right.
But really they have put that behind them and they're ready to move forward. So we help with that kind of expungement and sealing as well. We also help folks who are facing the loss of their homes, either through foreclosure, through tax sale, or when there's complications about who owns the home.
Right.
And a lot of times that occurs when you have, grandma had the home for a long time, grandma didn't have a will.
Yep.
And then the question is, okay, what about the kids? What about the grandkids? What happens to that home? And really preserving the home and the continuity of that generational wealth within the family and the community stability is just so important. So that's another aspect of work that we do that I may not have touched on earlier.
And that's such an important thing because, the ability to property ownership is such a building block for so many people in terms of, as you say, generational wealth, to be able to create that and build that. And there are so many pitfalls and so many ways that people can get snared in that if they haven't made preparations for who's going to take over the property, who's going to be responsible for it. It's one of those things. And even if they have, I imagine, going through the probate process.
Absolutely
going
right.
to court. And who's going to represent the surviving family when you've got the government on the other side of that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's absolutely right. And it's when you're talking about foreclosure work and home ownership preservation work, incredible complexities that a lawyer, certainly if that wasn't their area of focus, would not want to go into court and handle the case, right? It's really needs an expert hand in it. And I just wanted to mention another area that really could also be a really added benefit to your guests, and that is we do preparations of powers of attorney for healthcare, for property, and for another document that's called a transfer on death instrument that really helps to simplify the process of turning over ownership of a piece of real estate to the next generation.
Really important.
And those are some real issues that are about planning. They're not about court, but they are about planning, where having a lawyer and having legal advice to help think through the decisions is key, and we do that.
So much. Thank you so much. This has been fascinating. As we wrap up here, can you remind our viewers one more time, how do they get in touch with Legal Aid Chicago?
So multiple ways. One is to pick up the phone, 312-341-1070. Visit our website, www.legalaidschicago.org, and you can register online. You can see our walk-in clinic locations and hours. We're also in many of the courts on related issues too, with help desks, as well as the public library downtown, the Harold Washington Public Library. So there's lots of ways to get connected with us.
Fantastic. Well, Kate, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a great education for me and a real pleasure to talk to you today. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for viewing us, and we'll see you next month on Guest House TV. And until then, good night and stay warm.
Good night. Thanks, Adam.